The next stitch we're going to thread is the 3-thread overlock wide. When we sew a 3-thread overlock stitch, we use 2 looper threads, but just 1 needle thread. I can do it narrow with the right needle, or I can do it wide with the left needle. Since we're going to sew 3-thread overlock wide, I need to remove the right-hand needle down here at the needle area of my machine. To get ready to do this, I'm going to first open up the front cover, and then I'm going to roll the movable knife out of the way, just so I have a clearer view of the needle area. I want to remove this right-hand needle. I don't want to just leave it unthreaded, but I want to completely remove it. If I don't remove it, it can affect the look of my stitch. So to do that, I'm just going to place a finger behind the needle, and you'll notice that there's an A next to this screw and a B next to this screw. A is for the right needle, B is for the left needle. I'm going to use my screwdriver that I had in my removable storage compartment, and I'm going to put it into the little A screw there, turn it counterclockwise, and then remove this right-hand needle altogether. Now I'm ready to thread up my machine for 3-thread wide overlock sewing. The first thing we're going to do before threading is raise our presser foot lifter. This will release the tensions so that they'll receive the thread when we bring the thread into the tension discs. We're going to start with the upper looper and bring that from back to front through the thread guide at the top. Bring the thread into the thread guide at the top of the machine here, holding it with your left hand, putting a little tension on it. Take the tail end and bring it forward, bring it into the tension discs, floss it a little bit to make sure it goes in, and then continue down around this thread guide here, and then follow the red dotted thread path. Bring it under this first guide. Then we're going to bring it from left to right into this next guide. Sometimes it wants to come out when you do that one, so just make sure you tuck that back in there. Then we're going to bring this from right to left into the next guide, and then we're going to thread the eye of the upper looper. If your thread's a little fuzzy on the end, just give that a little trim, and you might find it helpful to use your tweezers to catch that thread on the other side after you thread the eye of the looper, and just bring that thread all the way to the back, and then grab it with your left hand to straighten it out and pull it through like so. You want to make sure it's behind the lower looper there like that. Next we're going to thread the lower looper. So we're going to take our yellow thread, bring it through the thread guide at the top of the machine, tuck it into the thread guide here, hold with a little tension with your left hand, take the tail end and bring it forward, floss it a little bit to make sure it goes into that tension disc, tuck it behind this thread guide here, and we're going to follow the yellow dotted thread path this time. Slip it in from right to left in the first guide, from bottom to top under the next guide, from bottom to top into the next guide. You can turn your hand wheel a little bit if you need to get these in position to reach them a little easier. This one again over here from bottom to top, like so. Now this one has a little slot on the end of the lower looper that can be, it's a little hard to see, but it's easy to thread, and I'm going to show you how. That's what these diagrams right here on the front of your machine are indicating, but let me show you what they're trying to show you there. Tuck the thread behind your lower looper like this. Take your tweezer and just bring that thread over. If you miss it, just do it again. You should feel it just drop into that little slot on the end of the lower looper. Take your scissor, give that thread a little trim so you have a nice clean end, and thread the eye of your lower looper. When you thread the eye of the lower looper, pull that thread to the back. And this is very, very important, but what you want to make sure is that the lower looper thread is sitting on top of the upper looper. If the lower looper thread is going underneath the upper looper, you're not going to be able to sew. The stitch won't form properly. Think of this little dip in the top of the upper looper. It's almost like a little holder for the lower looper thread. That way you'll know you've got it threaded properly. Now I'm going to thread the needle thread. I'm going to thread the blue thread. Reach up here, bring my thread into the thread guide at top. Snap it into the guide at the top of the machine here. Hold this with your left hand for a little bit of tension. Bring the tail end down into the tension disc. Floss it a little bit to make sure it goes in there. Bring it around this thread guide here, over the blue dot, because we're doing blue. Then bring it into the left hand thread guide above the left hand needle, and now thread your needle. Grab the end of the thread, bring it to the back, pull that loose bit through the eye of the needle, and then put all of your threads underneath the presser foot lifter. Roll that movable knife forward again. One last thing before we begin stitching is to adjust our tension settings where they need to be for our fabric. I'm going to sew a medium weight cotton, and our manual recommends that we use 2.5, 2.5, and 2 for tension settings. So remember that these tension dials actually have a range from 0 up to 9, with 9 being the tightest and 0 being the loosest. My manual recommends 2.5 with this as my reference point, 2.5 for my upper looper, and 2 for my lower looper. So let's see how that looks, and then we can make adjustments if necessary. I'm going to place my fabric in front of the presser foot, lower the presser foot lifter, and step on the foot control to start sewing. And there's our 3-thread overlock wide. It looks great on the back. The upper thread looks just a little tiny bit loose. I could turn the upper thread tension here. Let's see how that looks. So I'm going to come back down here and sew. And that was just right. That was just the adjustment we needed. The stitch is now perfectly balanced on the top and on the back. Now let's see how to sew a 3-thread overlock narrow.